Lukey. Great show for us today, all about playfulness and a little more about whole brain functioning. Yeah. And so as you can really be felt really resourceful, of course, and a sense of interest is, yes, there's a state that's happening ever more, and you're more in your recreative self, yes, and others are too around you, and an ever more sense of leisure and more play is. And believe it or not, you and I, we are probably the most flexible in a state of playfulness. And we're going to be describing today, how could this be our original state, basically, a little bit, and what's going on or with this. But basically, like, whole brain patterning is where you've got this resourceful state. If you look at the literature, you could really see that what we're going to be talking about today is really common sense and it's not too much really discovered, but yet you're remembering ever more, what's common and uncommon wisdom, yes? So it's good neurological recall that you have after this show, perhaps, that you could sit back and you're really getting a good imprint. The instrument that Annie Jubb and I made took some 19 years of research, and afterward, of course, it was like quite amazing instrument that we went on to apply everywhere. But it would be an instrument that you can pick up and look, and you can get a determinedness of who's in front of you and the degree to which somebody is more in whole brain patterning. And so it's great because you could be looking at this yourself. How do you fit into everything? Otherwise, sort of, it's like a limited mind function. So we're going to be talking a little bit about whole brain patterning, yes, and limited mind function. What does that mean? It means that the various things that you could do is to cause yourself to be more total, where your neurology is in the way that that's being used, versus it could be mediocre or really not too good. So where aversive neurology would have been active instead, it neurologically inhibits the frontal cortex, which is connected much more to the left hemisphere and the back of the brain. And so these components more or less aren't functional quite, where somebody's in more of an averse state. So we're going to be talking a little bit about this today. So for you and I to have access to our whole cortex, you see, we've got this feeling of pleasantry, okay, and interest, good. And this is really an effective form of hardwiring this pattern in, so that when you're waking up in the morning after this, it's just automatically it becomes triggered, you see. And so you're future pacing something which is really resourceful. It just gets triggered because of something that you're looking at in a future moment. And so you've got this resourceful state accessed, and it keeps reminding you until something is sudden that this becomes your whole way of your being. And so what better way to be able to stay more using, yes, and cause everything to be coming ever more quick, more your way, good, and have social skill where you're more together, and your recreatedness, and you're more in a play behaviour. Could you imagine that it's interesting that there's quite a few adults and they just really, can't play? I mean, I think that might seem strange to some people, but it's true. You'd get a group of adults together, a number of those might really not want to play. You see, because, but what's going on there? Anyway, it's an ongoing state of a recreatedness where you are in a state of play and you've got no boundary and you're really intimate with the subject matter that you're investigating and doing things. Okay. So it's actual that a natural self is, and this is not a state, no. It's a mode of your being ongoing, okay? And it's some combination of what intrinsic patterns that you have inside yourself. And so in a playful state, you've got great memory for the sticky factor for things which is just automatic and automated. And so it's an easy capacity to have a quick pattern for recall afterward, yes. Because why? Well, because you fell more silent inside, you see, yes? And this all became ever more imprinted. And so it's a really fast fashion of a modeledness where you might have been looking at something which you want to be achieved and you're just imitating. Okay. So you get these, and then all the way through your adult life, something was captured that's quite resourceful, and it engaged your frontal cortex, because if you didn't do that, well, nothing is to actually be transferred that's new information when you dreamed. And so that's how that happens. And so it's faster the more that you're really able to be downloading new information right now, okay? So whole brain patterning really is the guarantee of your stronger memory and your great recall and a great capacity to be more in association and have good serial memory. Okay. And the sticky factor really is to recall more where this is being strengthened, and a network is that you're lengthening an inspiration through your nose. And after you've done that for maybe 20 minutes, you will feel more like in a sense of meditative bliss. And so playfulness really is your resourcefulness, and it's an essential condition of your own receptivity and to be able to pick patterns out from your environment and have good social skill where you are with others. And you've got transpersonal perception. Yeah, why not? You've actually really got ethic, and you're way more empathic, you see, and it's just natural. So it's really one's home life, and what you're doing professionally should be something that you do more in your home life. And it's as good for the child wherever anything is, and something is really academic about what you're doing, and not the public school system, but it's something else which is really vital, yes? Because why? Well, because leisure, recreation, playfulness cause somebody to learn much faster. Yes, okay. And so the circumstance really, which is for you, where you're at night and you slept, and what got sorted to be recalled the next day, and the state specificity of all of that, where whole brain patterning is, you've got playfulness, which is your original condition. And this father's research, really some 40-odd years, and through looking at the whole area, it's very original for us, you see, to be in this having this nerve force of more efficiency and having a neural efficiency, and you're doing that more where you are playful, and this is our original state, okay? So if we really could expect a unique perspective, yes. And the premise more that some interest is where research is, that supports all of this. Of course, some 19 years of research there at NYU, and it's culminated in this instrument called Jubb's instrument for determining whole brain patterning. And it's for you and I really having the ability to be able to see the degree to which somebody's expressing whole brain functioning, you see? Yeah, so... Everybody really has a great aptitude, you see, and you've got a born capacity to have some influence where your brain and the development is, and what contribution was it that your parents had to this. And there's some combination of some inherited disposition, of course, contributing to the way that you might have, and others some unique pattern and capacity for things. So epigenetics and genetics really is a starting point where people could look to see some pattern exists for sure, and that could be reproduced, or something happened where that is and it's not reproduced, or something has grown and changed. And this can happen all the way through your life, not like, oh, your brain just stops, when you're 25 or something. So it's really given to you that you've got this behaviour, and your parents caused something to be more, like I just stole, in the way that you have a foundation. And that's a morphogenetic field which is laid down in your nerve structure and the development of these things more for you, where you've got this born aptitude, you see. And this is innate. Okay. So having pattern recognition, it's amazing, because you've got 100 people and you've got some there, and they are extraordinary at being able to, pick a pattern out and be able to solve things. And some modelness of how did they do this, and this sort of hard wiring ever more starts to be more where your nerve force is developed. And so somebody's a really professional entertainer, or an athlete, or anybody who's got really good social skill, a musician, they've really moved past a point where your nerve formed, you've really got a great aptitude for something solidified, where you're associated with what you're expressing and doing, and you've got this related skills in some area. And so you or I could, as someone be really exceptional, develop neural efficiency. And it's certain that this is incredible, because you could really be tracking patterns of behaviour, for instance, and the aptitude and where or ever maybe some shortcoming was. So gender unique behaviours are relative to various generalisations, like women are better at empathic course and men are better at serial processedness. And you're looking at studies where these are generalisations about men and women. Females tend to be a bit more better at multitasking, and on average, and men tend to be better at where visual spatial types of tasks are existed. So my research really, for 19 years at NYU, really was looking at developing a instrument which could give you an ease of ability to be able to determine pleasure and aversion, and see what whole brain patterning is. So playfulness really starts all this inquiry, because you could see that something is very flexible, more where someone is in this sense of a being, and where you and I have flexibility, it really activates to some culmination of these sort of intrinsic patterns that you have inside you. And this is your original state. And this is sort of what's really led you to where you are. And this is more like the childlike within you see. So the adult is a successful sort of pattern where things are, and whatever intervention was, and how functional, plastic, have you remained more where you're able to solve and pick up things, okay? So what's related to you, that you're thriving more in your life, and there's better moments where you could think, well, I could be more flexible. Playfulness really is your assistedness, especially where somebody's more using. And of course, you're really a quick study at that point. You see, it's ever more social where your learning is, and your recreativeness is a state of leisure where health is. Jump's instrument really is applied like at a level of cognitive development, and what lines there is where you've got this natural condition of your ability to be serial processing, and you've got also some established condition of sort of logic and reasoning, and you're making a map inside, and everybody does. And, that comes about because, we've got these three brain processes like generalization, and then to be able to realise that you've deleted a lot of stuff to have what you've got in your consciousness, okay? because consciousness itself is only 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information at any one period of time. And so another component of that in making a map is just kind of how you or I, is constructed things. And is this better for you? Yes, and whole brain patterning is really what are preferred modes that you could have and do, where you're sorting information and you're really ever more exceptional where things are. And where somebody's more in a play state, they sure are more in this sense of being. And so synesthesia is really the resolve where some activities existed, but you're processing something in another level. And so aversion, where that was, suddenly becomes ever more comfort, you see, because that logos where universalness was frozen, it no longer has to be where that is. It's just like being more reframed, you see. And what's the metaphor that you could use where this is so many? And what's more ethical about your recreated self and causing others to be more in their recreated self? So learning is more quick and imitation is more your capacity to be able to contemplate and have experiential-based learning as well as imitation, okay? But imitation is really probably one of the faster ways, quick, smart, somebody is just kicking things up. And so new behaviour has to be sort of put into your frontal cortex before it then gets logged in the postmotor cortex area. Okay, and that's what happens when you sleep. But what would happen if you weren't getting into your frontal cortex? Because, you need interest to get into your frontal cortex. Yeah? And if somebody was averse to stuff, are they in their frontal cortex? No. Okay. Some of this is interesting here where the show is a great book of, like Job's little red book, Volume 1. That's a really good one. That's all about your true identity. Anyway, you've got these variables where you've got an amount of time and it's what's the least, okay? What's the shortest pattern, for you to have established a new way to be? Well, it really does happen to be around 42 days because that's just 2 cycles. And you have to have 2 cycles, of course, to have a pattern. And so that's 2 sun cycles of 21 days. And so doing Job's cell rejuvenation and applying more whole brain patterning where you are for these 42 days, it sure does change your habits. It was in new ways to actually be considering things. And if some task or habit could have had some complexity where it required ever some sort of persistentness and perseveredness, it's a study and listening to this and having more daily repetition, and suddenly this is sort of coming to be your more deep, more ingrained habit where you're shuttle your internal dialogue down, and now you've got access to this circle of power, which is your stop, start, redirect, where the vestibular sense is. Okay. So it's really a deep, ingrained habit where something was, and how about just polarizing to that wherever your attention is, and your first attention, and clearing all of that away so you don't have any internal dialogue, you see. So that's what this work is about, okay. So this is an outward lived, onward going meditation, and cell rejuvenation and whole brain functioning is something which you're practicing. So playfulness really is where your original state is, and it really is defined by this state of your being where you are beyond ordinary time. Okay. And so whilst you're sort of where somebody's in this being, and it's like really managing life's affair, it's really like you, this beloved, really having a great instance of a better or higher IQ, and somebody really tends to have a lot more grey matter in their left hemisphere and volume as well. And so it's numerous nerve region, and you've got really robust white matter, more fat in the right hemisphere, and its connectivity between unique parts where the brain is, and you've got this corpus callosum of a bundle of fibres that's causing the hemispheres to have traffic between them modulated and flowing, okay, which it does where you're in a playful state. Because you have this sense of aesthetics, which is the septal region of your brain, and it's sensing, your opiate levels and this sort of thing. So you could be right now sort of tuning into this podcast, and you're sort of unlocking your full capacity. You could be really turning off all of your internal dialogue, and you could start to have a practice ever more of a preferred mode of sorting information where you're really unleashing things more, where your full capacity is. So why not be coming from your executive guidance area? Yes, and this is the faculty that you have to inspire creative influence of the future, and it's your functional plasticity where you are to have this be unlocked. Yes, okay. And this is whole brain functioning automatically. So it's getting more hardwired as a pattern is. You're using direction to go toward and forward and have something within, and that's how you're using direction where the vestibular sense is. So it's 100% more of your brain where some not any myth is, because it's possible for you to be using more your entire hemispheres, where contemplativeness and nobody could say that you couldn't improve the cognitive function where you are, which most can, because there's a big difference between somebody's brain that's very exceptional and the use of something very exceptional like this versus just mediocre. So it's really having this great flexibility, imagining this, yes, and exercising the work by looking into whole brain patterning and this work, and certainly optimizing more a hardwiring of the patterns about what this is. So, and is that the course of groupthink around you to be changed, where things are, what's functional, better way to be considering those things. So in eye awareness, your empty center is, and you just simply have care, that's it. And it's very effective because you're receptive. There's no bias, and it's really a beingness where you are in perfect detachment and not being bogged down by anything physical at all. And so somebody could have let go those things, you see. So it's strategies where you are to include your being and being more in uptime and using your vestibular sense and learning about how to do this. Okay, so this is our work where whole brain functioning is. It all relates to how you're using the vestibular sense. So when you're remaining associated, what does that mean? It means your present tense. Okay, it looks like you show up like you're bright and you're receptive. And you've got channels below your random phoneme generator that's skimming those channels, and it's ticking out things from the weightedness of itself in those channels. And you don't really have any extraneous cortisol. Okay. So managing stress, of course, and being ever more flexible and spontaneous in your own creative self in the pursuit of a changeless bliss. And you having achieved this, just because you've achieved this, it's really bliss flows because of your feeling of achievement. Yes, okay. So play really is essential. It's a primary state of our being ongoing, and it's a natural condition where flexibility is certain, you see. So if you've got this spontaneous creative intelligence where this skill is, and leisure and recreativeness is in the pursuit of the things that you do, and you're mindful because you're getting something done for the sake of itself, not because of the sake of something else. And so you're more whole brain patterning, and you're more astute to the non-verbals being shown and verbal language, and you're engaging more because you're really more whole, where your ability is about to track and calibrate external behaviours and things to some internal processing that's connected to. And so where you're engaged ever more experientially, where this is, you can overcome any limitation for sure because you're just imitating. You see, that's one way of learning. Or you could be contemplating, and that's like talking about this, or you could be experientially using this where you are. Good. And so playfulness is our original condition, makes common sense. It's universal. Your learning and the cause and effect of any strategy is an opportunity that you have to come from more realizedness where pattern building is. And so good statesperson, where you and I were being represented, how good is that? It's somebody who's got these patterns and they're sorting for agreement and getting agreements. Okay. So where somebody can't agree, that's going to be not quite right. But what can you agree to, you see? So playfulness, where your original condition is, you're going to get more agreement because you've got playfulness where things are. Shouldn't people socialise and connect together more? And yes, because then you're going to get more done when you're feeling more in a flow. And what happens when you've got emotional control? Why? Because, you've got a scale that goes from 1 to 10, and nothing goes to 11, of course. Okay. And you're just keeping things at 2. Wow, okay, that's pretty good. So now you have a really good capacity to resolve conflict and good confidence where resilience is built, yes, ongoing. And so this is a lived meditation where a resilience is ever more because you're feeling confident. And this is hailed, yes, it's perfect detachment. So bliss naturally just flows from you having achieved this. Anything that you achieve, you have bliss. And so it's a very good one that you can have achieved by just having cleared away your internal dialogue. So it's really all the chatter that could have been, memories, experience, trying to pass all of that sort of stuff on, which doesn't work. Okay? Most people get kicked off the stage if you do anything like that. So being empty more inside and being for the listener and being for who's listening, and you're renting time to whoever it is that's speaking. It's like, yeah, right, but like I said, listen speech going on, how good is that? So the speech is coming from listening. So playfulness really allows you to just be like this naturally. And even as an older adult, playfulness is ever linked to so many things like reduced risk of the loss of your memory, lack of any capacity to have dementia, right? So pleasure and interest in whole brain patterning really is how you could be lowering your stress and you could learn how to do this. And so now you're feeling better. You see, you've got these chemicals, you've got endogenous opiates, you've got endorphins and kephalins. You've got the major neuromuscular transmitter acetylcholine and racemopine and dopamine, serotonin, okay, and oxytocin. Whoa, yeah. So it's mitigating your body, mind, and spirit effect, and it's causing you to sort of have more of an overall resilience, okay, whole brain patterning, and your choosiveness to be in a state more of playfulness. So it's precognitive then, yes, and it's sort of something before even you're thinking, and something is about our recapitulative involuted past, which is a golden age, which too just sort of not too long ago was passed through. Okay. So Job's little red book, volume 3, is really good because that's all about a new mindset, and it's no longer coming from limited mind function, you see. So leisure and recreatedness and your own supportedness for feeling successful where your life is, and harmony, and what's the ingredient, that single that does this? It's playfulness, okay, where you've got harmony in the nest. So activities where playfulness is a nerve plasticity because of it, you've got a force which is a greater capacity to be able to have adapted and changed and not caused you yourself to be polarized, like where just something is on and off. It's like, that's not going to be good. So whole brain patterning really describes two primary categories which develop more where childhood is. And one type is like in your play, where children are sort of relevant because it causes a nerve development, and you've got one, which is your peripheral focus. Yeah, that's right. And the other one is more your focalized learning. Okay. So you've got these two pieces of ourselves. So how play is where your life is, and what about if that was missing? So what happens when adults can't play? And what leads you all the way through your life really is this child within yourself. And as children are engaged ever more where you've got self-initiated, and that's good. You've got also partnering skills, yes, good. And you've got team and family sort of dynamics. And these are all things which is your social conditioning, but what would happen if they didn't have that, you see? So all kinds of separated stages where some imitation don't exist. There is no such thing as any separated stage. Like somebody goes and they'll say things like that. That's completely not right whatsoever. It doesn't mean that you don't think more in concrete terms before you're able to think more in abstract reasonness. It's just like these are all things which become built and not just one thing before another per se. So it's a physical, practical sense of some things which is more abstract, of course. Of course, play really allows you to develop and thrive, and it really is what's the time that you've had early on, and how does this impact slowly but sure the transformedness of I within your own self and your interdependence. And more you have this I inside, and you're really good because you could pick up non-verbal and verbal patterning, and you've really got great recognition, you see, rather than a bit of a Dunning-Kruger, maybe you should learn about that one, and Asperger's and degrees of autism sort of thing. So what's modelled, and is it that you could have avoided that surrogate spouse-related types of growing up where that wouldn't have been so good. You've got to have got over that or even learn about it, okay? So it's imaginative, and might there be some strategy, and you don't have to have knowledge what that was. It's just, give it to your dreamer. So your dreamer is giving you the solution whilst you were dreaming, and did you have to really know anything about that? Not really. Okay. So where some assistance where your own personal power is, it's your social skill and your emotional regulation and your capacity to be able to have social influence over others so you could get things done for yourself. Okay. So your own spontaneous creative intelligence, you see, this is adding up, and how you show up, it's really sort of how associated you really are. And so how enticed evermore where spirituality is, it's really a charisma that you have in your intrinsic path. And it's really a fixed set path that you have a greater capacity to go beyond. And this is intelligence to have been able to survive. So whole brain functioning really is where life and nerve is operating, where you've got self-development and something is functional and open for learning. So the nerve never stops actually being able to have a greater amplitude and aptitude. And it's no point is the brain all of a sudden, oh no, that's stopped. No, because behaviour is what creates these things, not something else. So it's a functional plasticity and learning. And so whole brain patterning really causes you to have ability to be able to be more like an expert and pick up those things because you can have learned how to look at the chunks of behaviour and put things together ever more. So your sitting, walking, living meditation is about this work, and your focus is about this work. This isn't still, silent, and transparency, where your ongoing position is you've got a body, and the analog sculptedness of it, and you're always in a visiting frame. Ooh, that's good. And that you've got a focus of some resource before you're focusing on some outcome. And so that's interesting. It's better to have put things in terms of something that's a modal operative possibility than going, no, you must, which is not too playful, but you could really be saying must and being quite playful. So with a quiet inspiration, not too anything localized whatsoever, just automatic. It's not controlled at all. It's your unconscious self that's just lengthening the inspiration through your nose. Good. And over time, like 20 minutes or more, it's like you could be really feeling in a more state of sort of ecstasy, you see, and meditation. And so what's coming to you as the listener and what you're hearing, and listening is more your selectivity, you see. So speech, where listen speech is, it's sort of listening more than hearing. It's listening because it's really selective. So your speech is listen speech. So where playfulness is, that's just original. That's what happens. It's just unchallenged where you are, where nature is. It's really adventure and impulsiveness, and more not really goal-directed at all. And so playfulness really is beyond any one prefix set pattern of response to have been able to survive, and your ability to be able to go beyond that. And having a filial piety toward your parents and you, the progeny where you are, and all the way through your life, you see. So what you've really been taught over many years, and you've got this self-development and whole brain patterning training is you really being able to apply more excellence and adventure, and bringing about more, what gives you more the tools to, get you going where things are through life. It's like, whoa, all of a sudden you've got, goosebumps. Okay. So it's essential. You've got this psychological sort of development where self is, and the rainbow warrior and the path of the hollow bones. You could really be learning ever more about. It's really it's being on a path with a heart's path. And so being ongoing where a state of play is pretty complementary. You don't have to do anything where you're in a state of play. That's just natural, but you've got this synchronizedness of the nervous system, and it's more unique where this is, because that synchrony really is all of the parts flowing, and a unique condition of a dynamic magnetic current flowing, and cognition, and your listening, and the capacity to be able to put things in chain anchored states together for resourcefulness. And so behavior really engages your integration. That's like a flow between all the parts. You being associated, that means you really being here, present in the moment now more. So the only way that you can do that is to be more, not having any internal dialogue. And so being congruent is like the channels that's below where you are that you pick from, and your random phoneme generator is just picking from these channels and what's weighted. And so various types of information that's magnetic and a dynamicness, and you're using the vestibular sense to move toward and have things within. And so a tonus is supporting this, you see, and a hardwiredness of what this is. So you're really looking at your nerve signal and what action potential could have been travelling through the myelin nerve fibre, yes, long before anything was said. You have a readiness potential. And so playfulness, really, you have access to this more other than conscious tonus, which is an operatedness on your posture and things that's sort of automatic. And it's allowing a harmonization through analog and the sculptedness of this analog, so that you're able to achieve more information flowing across the corpus callosum, that's the bundle of connective fibers connecting you between the hemispheres. So play really gives you a greater capacity to be able to do this. You can solve equations. You're playing both sides where something is, where the brain is, and it's contributing more complementary to each other, you see. So your allostatic sense of bliss and your septal region connecting you more to whole brain functioning versus limited mind function instead. Why? Well, because when the amygdala would have been firing an aversion was it's neurologically inhibited the septal, which connects you to the frontal cortex. And so you really don't have much frontal cortex going on where you felt inhibited or adversed and dissociated. And so that's not really being playful. So playfulness really is a state of co-createdness. It's an original condition which, somebody doesn't have to learn how to smile, but you sure do have to learn how to frown, okay, basically. But it doesn't mean that wouldn't retract from something that was aversive. You sure do. And you move towards something which is attractive, you see. So this is how the vestibular sense is supposed to be used. And that's what whole brain functioning is about. So you being able to remain more in your frontal cortex and your medial forebrain bundle where things are in harmony, and your frontal gyrus and left superior frontal gyrus and these sorts of things really functional where you're in a resource state. Otherwise, no, they're not. So health is your own personal power, yes, and your own ability to be able to have social influence where you are and your social contact. And what your nerve is like a physical shrink would have had to be there, like they called it, the shrink, and they would shrink, whatever there was a problem or something. Good. But because otherwise, like, gosh, there's a bit of a loss of grey matter, and also white matter, and cognition and emotion as well. So whole brain functioning can be what you're picking up and leading you all the way through your life, and it's ever a more grand totality, of course. So the septal region, we've been talking about it, it's the region that connects your midbrain to your frontal cortex. Okay. And this neurology is firing up where you have interest, and if aversion was, then it gets neurologically inhibited instead. And what do you have after that? Well, just a little bit of sort of activity hovering around your brainstem, basically. Okay. So play really allows you to have this state of a controlled network, and you've got this functional control, and it doesn't. You're without a bias. You see. So you're not going to tell me the blood doesn't feel what this is, where you have bliss, and this is sort of you healing up the most. And this is the macrophage and your neutrophil and lymphocyte all of a sudden becoming more active and clearing away, debris like they should. So it's your expression of your opioid receptors, your delta and kappa sort of endogenous opiates. And these opiates really bump into toxin, you see, yeah? Ever heard about that? No. A lot of things that I've been talking about, maybe some people have maybe for the first time hearing. Okay. But I'll tell you what, opiates bump into toxins, yes they do. And then it sort of leaves a slight modification behind itself in the lymph as it's travelling. And that trail is just sort of bumped into by immune cells. They sniff it out. They go, oops. And when they connect to that, they can go back toward where the toxin is and, engulf it and clear it up with enzymes and things. And they sort of keep backs toward it along that sort of trail. So happiness in your endogenous opiates and your ability to be able to have nitrous oxide and you're opening up microcapillary. You've got specific life cord signaling going on where your intestine is. And you've got all these calciferin, and you've got engaged, slip versus adhesion molecule and things. So you've really got these internal endogenous opiates, and as you're feeling bliss and playful, you've really got a great influence over anything that would have been inhibiting and causing you not to have had a proper focus. So even like immune cells chemotaxing towards what the toxin is, and you're looking at phagocytosis right there. And so you're assisting your immune system where toxin is. So bliss really is where you've got these endogenous opiates, and play, we've been just saying, getting a bit of fresh air, okay, sunlight, how good is that? And not being under artificial light, that's not going to be too good. So playfulness really is the cause of people to be wanting to get outside, to exercise, and to have, it's a feast for your eyes to be able to rest on the horizon. Okay. So what happens when that didn't happen, huh? And what happens whether you're just a child and your centre where things are is deficient, and it's a lackness of play, where distractedness would have been otherwise, and today what's going on is just somebody's just scrolling through their day. Oh my God. So artificial light coming from what you're scrolling and whatever that is sort of like fluorescence, like the white and the blue, those are directly linked to neoplastic sorts of conditions and things. So, it's just really, you and I really, we could trigger ever more conditions of health versus no. People have got sort of more skin conditions because everything is going on where you're just like not thinking about the dirty magnetic energy and what have you, and limiting whatever that is. And so it's really simple. If somebody switched off their LEDs a little bit more, or they had these UV filters and things, and otherwise it can be a continuous exposure to white and blue light, that's not going to be too good for your eyesight and things. So understanding where play is and being more outdoors, and endogenous opiates and the neurotransmissions of this, it's a managing stress and emotion. And you've got a regulatory process to do such. And playfulness is just automatic. Otherwise, substance abuse would have been because a whole development of opioid addiction and those sorts of things. Because why? Well, because patterns you should have to actually cause yourself to have comfort and have opiates, it's like, why not have those? You see? It's because it's just wiring in a new movement experience. And now your mind can conceive new possibility. So being congruent, that's like parallel processness. Being integrated, that's all the parts flowing as one. Being associated, showing up, being present. Yeah. So the quality of your voice, where something is rhythmic and resonant versus it's very good and it's like this, which that's coming from the amygdala and aversion. So the instrument really could cause you to have a greater ability to be able to pick out whole brain patterning, and you could ever be aware more that some 78% of sort of something has got to be there where your person is or you to have something passed on. Otherwise, no, it's not going to get passed on. Okay. So it's really a real happiness, where anyone is, and just something precognitive, yes, and that's probably, what everything is about. So wrapping everything up. Playfulness, yes, this is your original condition. You're boosting endogenous opiates. You're increasing dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. You're feeling more connected to everything. And so it's behavior that creates these neurotransmitters and things just like that. And I guess kind of like this is the message, I guess, of the show that we've had today. So how about integrating this more into your daily life and having good brain and body and mind and spirit where you're thriving. Anyway, I hope you're having a really great day as you're listening to this, and looking forward to catching up to you at a future show. Love you, mate.